The following video is brought to you by Amino. Download the new Horror Amino app free for iOS and Android today to join a mobile community for horror fans. Talk about gory flicks, check out creepy pics, engage in macabre contests, and make some scary friends to discuss your gruesome passions with. Horror Amino.
Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, with more listy goodness for you fine creeps. First things first, though, let's recap the results of my last list poll on the Horror Amino app and see who you guys and gals believe are the top 3 best relatives of Leatherface. Number 3 was one of the original film's classic characters, the Hitchhiker, with 34 votes. Ooh. Number 2 was a newer character in the form of R. Lee Ermey's Sheriff Hoyt, with 59 votes. Number 1 was, of course, fan favorite Chop Top by a jaw-dropping 138 votes. Unanimous, guys. My top choice, Drayton, got little love as he lagged to number 6 with only 20 votes. Oh, man. Oh, well, let's see if we're on the same wavelength with this list. Behind every successful male horror icon, there's usually a woman that kicks his ass. Let's celebrate these ladies, be they either good or evil. Here's my list of the top 10 women of horror. Bring out the girls.
Number 10. Angela Franklin from Night of the Demons.
In Night of the Demons, Angela is a petulant goth chick played by Amelia Kincaid. Angela's goth phase brought with it a fascination with the supernatural, particularly witchcraft. This leads to a Halloween party, which leads to one of those shitty seances that never works, led by Angela, but this seance actually works. Unfortunately, it means a bunch of folks getting possessed, and a bunch of other folks being murdered. One of the possessed is Angela, who is already appropriately dressed for demondom. The possession starts with just some, innocent dancing, but when Angela gets to the tongue dancing, things start to get shitty.
Oh, don't tell me you're leaving. Sal wanted to go, but he decided to stick around.
Number 9. Angela Baker from Sleepaway Camp.
For most of Sleepaway Camp, Angela, played by Felissa Rose, is a quiet, shy girl on the surface that seems to be traumatized after a fatal water skiing mishap that took some lives. Water skiing is a blood sport. While Angela is at camp, some murders happen because it's a horror flick and murders have to happen or else it's just a movie about kids engaging in camp activities for an hour. Angela is clearly the murderer, but slaughter is not her biggest secret, believe it or not. No, I guess the producers thought Angela being the killer was a little too obvious or something, so they decided to have it turn out at the end of the movie that she has a penis. Because, showing a naked 14-year-old is a great way to end a movie. It's terrifying.
Well, good night, Angela.
Good night.
Good night.
Number 8. Tiffany from the Child's Play movies.
Chucky's better half, Tiffany was kind of a trashy chick that happened to be dating a serial killer, and that serial killer happened to come back from the dead as a Child's Play thing. For a while, the two were separated once Chucky became a doll, but they were reunited through a copy of, Voodoo for Dummies. Yeah, really, great satire there. Chucky kills Tiff, though, 'cause that's what he do, and we end up with 2 undead killer dolls that get married and somehow are able to copulate. It's weird. Tiffany and Chucky have a tumultuous relationship because she's not so into murder. I mean, she's into murder, but as a hobby, not a lifestyle. In the end, though, Tiffany always winds up back with Chucky, even when she's possessing Jennifer Tilly, apparently. Yeah, it gets really fucking weird.
Approximate value?
Well, my mother always used to say, you can't put a price on love.
Under $250 then.
Number 7. Sidney Prescott from Scream.
A kind of postmodern slasher movie heroine, Sidney, played by Neve Campbell in Scream, is typically sweet, wholesome, but she has a dark backstory. Her mumsy got killed a year ago. Aww. Things get a little worse when she's targeted by a killer who randomly decides to act out a slasher movie routine. This becomes a pattern for Sidney, who is constantly trying to keep her life together, but then some new bozo in a mask shows up to ruin her fun like in an episode of Scooby-Doo. Luckily, these killers have terrible vision in those masks, because they just can't not fall down over themselves. Sidney is a tough bird, too. Where other slasher film heroines fade away, she's kept going strong.
Hello, Sidney.
Yes?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Who is this?
You tell me.
Corey Gillis, 5550176.
Shit!
Hot flash, Corey. Prank calls are a criminal offense prosecuted under Penal Code 653M.
Number 6. Bride of Frankenstein from, The Bride of Frankenstein.
An icon, Bride of Frankenstein was played by Elsa Lancaster in, The Bride of Frankenstein. My personal favorite of the old Universal horror movies.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
Lancaster also happened to play Mary Shelley in the prologue of the film, which makes The Bride of Frankenstein the first ever self-insert.
Frightened of thunder, fearful of the dark, and yet you have written a tale that sent my blood into icy creeps.
Anyway, the bride doesn't show up until the very end, and she doesn't say or do anything notable beyond hissing disapproval, much like a real-life wife. Am I right, fellas? Anyway, the bride's design by Jack Pierce has been enough to keep the character alive over the years. Or undead, or whatever, I don't know.
Number 5. Trash from Return of the Living Dead.
Played by Linnea Quigley in Return of the Living Dead, Trash is a punk girl with a strange desire to be eaten alive.
Try not to think about dying too much.
Well, for me, the worst way would be for a bunch of old men to get around me and start biting and eating me alive.
I see.
First,
Trash then proceeds to strip naked and dance around for some reason. This is why she's on the list.
Number 4. Pamela Voorhees from Friday the 13th.
How can Pamela Voorhees, played by the late great Betsy Palmer, not be on this list? There aren't that many female slasher villains, and she was the first, I guess. I'm not gonna actually check if that's true or not. You know the story by now. Pam's son drowned at Camp Crystal Lake due to negligent counselors, so she went all crazy killer. Betsy Palmer played crazy really, really well.
Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
Pamela was eventually decapitated, which made way for Jason to come back and become the star. Mrs. Voorhees is probably one of the only slasher villains to stay dead. Anytime she did come back, she wasn't actually real, or in the reboot, it was a flashback. I think Pamela's backstory would be worth fleshing out. She's a lot more interesting than Jason, not gonna lie.
Number 3. Laurie Strode from Halloween.
Played by Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode is the quintessential final girl. Untainted by all of her friends, Laurie is focused on her studies. The only time when academia is not on her mind is when she suspects that a man is creeping on her, but even then, she's still on the ball.
Ma'am?
Answer the question.
Costain wrote that fate was somehow related only to religion, whereas Samuels felt that, fate was like a natural element, like earth, air, fire, and water.
That's right. Samuels definitely personified fate.
Laurie has no real interest in boys beyond wanting the approval of her friends. Instead, Laurie is a babysitter on her off time. Not a bad gig for a girl of her age, and you can trust a gal like her. For all intents and purposes, Laurie is a girl with a bright future, which makes her such a tragic character when her estranged brother escapes from an asylum to pay her a visit. Laurie Strode is changed at the end of Halloween, after having confronted her brother, the infamous Michael Myers. Because of Michael, Laurie will no longer look to her future, but instead be trapped in her past.
Number 2. Annie Wilkes from Misery.
Annie Wilkes is the worst kind of fan there is. Well, before the internet and the Star Wars prequels came out at least. In Misery, Annie is played by Kathy Bates and happens to rescue her idol, an author named Paul Sheldon, from a snowstorm. It all starts out innocently enough. Annie works hard to nurse Paul back to health, but when Wilkes reads the latest book where her fave character gets killed, well, she kind of flips out.
Misery Chastain cannot be dead.
Annie, in 1871, women often died in childbirth. But her spirit is the important thing, and Misery's spirit is still alive.
I don't want her dead! I want her! And you murdered her!
Annie forces Sheldon to go all revisionist and write a new book taking back the death of Misery. Not a bad deal, right? Well, Annie's brand of nursing is of the tough love variety, and her wholesome attitude makes her tortures all the more chilling to behold.
Annie, for God's...
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
Annie, please!
Oh, shit! That's gotta fucking hurt.
Number 1. Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street.
In many ways, Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp in Nightmare on Elm Street, is your conventional slasher film heroine. She's smart, kind, wholesome, yada yada yada. But you know what makes Nancy different from all the rest? Oh, a little word called proactive. And I'm not talking about the skincare product, but girl, you got that clear skin though. No, Nancy actually makes an effort to fight against Freddy, the man of her nightmares, instead of just sitting around for the guy to show up in an erotic dream involving Greg Brady or something. Nancy does some investigating, learning who Freddy is, what makes him tick, and most importantly, she discovers his weakness, without help. Nancy Thompson? More like Nancy Drew, am I right? Then, Nancy followed through. Freddy didn't know what hit him. Literally.
I grab the guy in my dream. You see me struggling, so you wake me up. We both come out, you whack the fucker, and we got him.
Are you crazy? Hit him with what?
You're the jock. You have a baseball bat or something. Just meet me at my porch at midnight. Oh, and meanwhile, whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Man, it is nice to make a video for once that isn't a total sausage fest, but who knows, maybe I neglected to mention a female horror icon that you appreciate. Well, I want to hear from you. Download the free Horror Amino app, go to the Jacques Stickman page, and vote on my top 10 Women of Horror poll to decide by popular demand which benevolent or malevolent gal of horror reigns supreme. While you're in the app, why not get involved with the community? There's something strangely horrific around every corner on Horror Amino, like spooky contests, and there's so much appreciation for every variety of scariness you can possibly imagine. Check it out, folks!
Horror Amino is available now on iOS and Android devices. Whatever side of horror you're interested in, this app has got you covered. You f***ing weirdos.